Of crazy, but last week I did numerous news conferences, all successful.
The morning began with an unusual tremor across the global political landscape. Phones buzzed in capitals from Washington to Ouagadougou as a single tweet rocketed through the internet. Burkina Faso is falling into dangerous hands. This so-called leader, Traoré, is misleading Africa. Watch closely. It was signed, of course, by former U.S. President Donald J. Trump. Within minutes, the post splashed across every major outlet. Analysts speculated wildly. Was it a warning? A taunt? Cable networks broke into programming for urgent panels. Hashtags like the Burkina Faso and Trump tweet trended before most Americans had finished their first coffee. Half a world away, Captain Ibrahim Traore, Burkina Faso's 34-year-old head of state, was in a modest government compound reviewing plans for rural road construction. Advisors rushed in with their phones glowing, but Traoré barely looked up. Those who know him say he has the rare ability to let silence do the talking. While commentators dissected every syllable of Trump's message, Traoré said nothing at all. The silence became its own statement. Talk shows demanded a response. Political strategists predicted a fiery rebuttal. But for 2 full days, the young leader offered only his usual schedule, visiting farmers, meeting students, and inspecting public works. When at last he appeared before the cameras, there was no grand stagecraft. Flanked only by a simple Pan-African flag and a circle of youth representatives, he began. Leadership is not measured by the volume of a voice, but by the depth of service. Our mission is not to impress foreign powers. It is to uplift our people. If our independence offends anyone, that is not our burden to carry. The address was brief, barely 10 minutes, but it ricocheted around the world. American networks replayed it in full. CNN analysts admired the restraint. Fox News debated whether it was naive idealism or deft diplomacy. Social media lit up. From Atlanta to Lagos, young activists clipped the quote, "If our independence offends anyone, that is not our burden to carry," and layered it over music on TikTok. Instagram feeds filled with side-by-side images of Traoré and historical revolutionaries like Thomas Sankara or Malcolm X. In Detroit, a black church pastor used the speech in a Sunday sermon on dignity and self-determination. Even Silicon Valley joined the conversation. Elon Musk tweeted simply, "Whether you agree or not, Traoré speaks with rare authenticity. Africa is waking up." The post drew millions of views within hours. Trump, never one to leave a challenge unanswered, fired back online. Africa deserves strong leadership, not militias pretending to be presidents. The tone was sharper this time, an unmistakable escalation. Yet again, Traoré refused to trade insults. Instead, he held a town hall meeting in Ouagadougou with farmers, students, and mothers. Cameras captured him saying, "If we are militias, then we are militias for peace, for education, for agriculture, for truth. We carry weapons not for aggression but for protection, because no one else will defend us." Those words rippled far beyond Burkina Faso's borders. Commentators noted that he had reframed the insult into a declaration of purpose. Across the Atlantic, African-American youth amplified the message, posting videos with captions like, "We are no longer slaves to global opinion." Political insiders in Washington began whispering that Trump's attacks were backfiring. Instead of discrediting Traoré, they were elevating him, turning the captain of a small West African nation into a global symbol of post-colonial confidence. By week's end, university classrooms from Ghana to Jamaica were dissecting the speech. Community groups in Paris held impromptu forums asking whether the young Burkinabe officer represented a new template for African leadership. Inside the White House, officials chose silence, declining to comment on the ex-president's remarks. But around the world, the question was already larger than Trump's tweet. Had a single outburst inadvertently amplified Africa's demand to chart its own course? The clash between a former U.S. president and a young African head of state was no longer a passing headline. It had become a full-blown global conversation. Donald Trump's second post calling Ibrahim Traore a militia, pretending to be president, poured gasoline on a fire that was already spreading across continents, while pundits on American cable channels argued over whether Trump's rhetoric was a calculated move or simply late-night bravado. The real drama unfolded thousands of miles away in West Africa. In Ouagadougou, Burkina Faso's capital, life moved with its usual rhythm. Street vendors sold grilled meat at dusk, motorbikes wove through narrow lanes, and school children carried battered notebooks home. Yet beneath the everyday bustle, a sense of something larger was building. A measured response, not a counterpunch Traoré, only in his mid-30s but already seasoned by military life and months of political turbulence, maintained his trademark calm. His communications team quietly prepared a community forum rather than a fiery press conference. When the day arrived, he sat on a plain wooden chair in a modest town hall space surrounded by farmers, teachers, and university students. Local radio carried the meeting live. International reporters huddled near the back. Power built on mockery, Traoré said evenly, is like a house of sand. If we are militias, then we are militias for peace, militias for education, for agriculture, for truth. We carry arms only to protect the lives no one else will defend. He didn't mention Trump by name, but the subtext was unmistakable. His voice never rose, yet every sentence felt like a carefully placed stone in a wall of quiet defiance. Listeners in the hall erupted in applause, and within hours, short video clips flooded social platforms across Africa and the diaspora. In Nairobi and Lagos, students organized watch parties, projecting the recording onto dormitory walls. In Paris, activists handed out flyers quoting his line about a house of sand. African-American influencers on TikTok remixed his words over hip-hop beats, turning them into rallying cries. Diaspora resonance. What caught many analysts off guard was the depth of response among Black communities outside Africa. In Chicago, a youth organizer tweeted, "This is the energy we need. Calm, strategic, unshakable." In Kingston and Port-au-Prince, radio hosts compared Traoré's measured demeanor to that of historic figures like Nelson Mandela during his early negotiations with South Africa's apartheid regime. Even inside the United States, the conversation began to shift. Cable news panels that initially treated Trump's comments as a domestic political sideshow now invited African scholars and diaspora voices to provide context on Burkina Faso's history and its recent pivot toward self-determination. The global echo from Brasilia to Jakarta, foreign ministries quietly took note. Diplomats observed that Trump's broadside had inadvertently raised Traoré's international profile. African Union representatives praised his composure in official statements, emphasizing the importance of sovereignty and mutual respect. France, once Burkina Faso's colonial ruler and still a powerful presence in West Africa, treaded carefully. Paris issued a neutral remark praising constructive dialogue and avoided mentioning Trump at all. Yet French newspapers ran op-eds acknowledging that Traoré's stance had stirred debate among French youth about their nation's lingering colonial ties. Meanwhile, social media metrics told their own story. Hashtags like Africa Speaks, Silent Strength, and Traoré Response trended globally. Memes contrasted Trump's capital letter tweets with images of Traoré speaking softly to villagers. One viral post simply read, "Decibels aren't power, integrity is." Trump doubles down, never one to leave a narrative uncontested. Trump appeared at a rally in the American Midwest. Gesturing sharply, he declared, "We have these little countries thinking they can lecture the United States. This captain, what's his name, Troy or whatever, wants to tell us about leadership. We'll see." The crowd offered a half-hearted cheer, but online reaction was far from enthusiastic. Even some of Trump's own supporters admitted on live streams that the ongoing feud was starting to look one-sided. Commentators joked that Traoré was winning by not playing. The My Response broadcast a week after the first tweet. Burkina Faso's state television network announced a live address titled simply, "My Response." The brevity of the title intrigued journalists worldwide. Was this finally the counterattack? When the broadcast began, viewers saw no grand stage or elaborate backdrop, just Traoré seated at a simple desk with a small national flag beside him. He looked directly into the camera, voice calm and deliberate. "I have heard the remarks. I have read the headlines. But leadership is not a competition of noise. It is the daily duty of protecting the dignity of one's people." He paused long enough for the silence itself to carry weight. Africa does not need validation from former presidents or distant powers. Africa needs unity. We need dignity. We must build even when others mock or misunderstand us. The live stream's comment section exploded. Messages of support from Accra, Montreal, Johannesburg, and London scrolled too fast to read. Yet Traoré continued without theatrics. Some speak as if Africa is broken. But who broke it? Was it we who came with chains and false contracts? Or those who claimed to help while taking what was ours? We are healing, and healing does not shout. It builds. He ended with a direct appeal to young Africans. If they mock you, build harder. If they doubt you, rise higher. Do not be drawn into battles beneath your purpose. Our silence, when rooted in confidence, is louder than any insult. The entire speech lasted less than 8 minutes, yet it resonated like a thunderclap. International newsrooms scrambled to replay the address. On Twitter, now rebranded X, hashtags such as Shine Africa Rising and Traoré Silences, Trump trended for days. Elon Musk retweeted the video with a single word: leadership. Actors, musicians, and civil rights leaders shared it as well. Viola Davis called it a lesson in modern statesmanship. Idris Elba described it as strength without spectacle. A turning tide back in Washington, political analysts noted how the narrative had shifted. What began as a dismissive tweet had evolved into a case study in restraint and credibility. The current U.S. administration quietly released a statement distancing itself from Trump's remarks. The former president does not speak for the United States government. African universities organized forums under banners like Rise Like Traoré. Students discussed economic independence, technological innovation, and Pan-African solidarity. In Ghana, Kenya, and South Africa, public radio aired call-in shows where listeners debated how to emulate Burkina Faso's focus on dignity and self-reliance. Meanwhile, in France, youth groups staged debates about their country's historical role in Africa. Some participants argued that Traoré's calm rebuttal had forced Europeans to confront uncomfortable colonial legacies. The human moment, perhaps. The most poignant scene came days later in a village school outside Ouagadougou. Traoré visited to inspect a recently reopened classroom. A shy 10-year-old girl tugged his sleeve and asked, "Monsieur le Président, were you scared when that American talked about you?" Traoré knelt to her level and smiled. "No," he said softly. "When you know who you are, no one's words can break you." A visiting photographer captured the moment. The president crouched beside the child, sunlight pouring through open windows. The image went viral and was soon printed on posters across Burkina Faso with the caption, "Know who you are." Lasting impact in the weeks that followed, Burkina Faso deepened ties with emerging economies in South America and Asia, signaling a pivot toward South-South cooperation. The government announced new infrastructure partnerships with Brazil and Indonesia. Diplomats from China and India publicly commended Traoré's principled diplomacy. At the United Nations, several African delegates referenced his speech while pushing for reforms to give the continent greater influence in global decision-making. Western diplomats, even those skeptical of his politics, acknowledged privately that his words carried unexpected weight. For many observers, what began as a social media scuffle had transformed into something far more significant. A blueprint for leadership in the 21st century, one that prizes composure over noise, vision over ego, and service over spectacle.